What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American Politics, back in with a new video. And today, we are going to be discussing what went wrong in 2022. But instead of just looking at a general overview, like, oh, we're going to look at, every single race in one video, I want to go state by state, election by election, and detail what actually went wrong in many of these races, because you can't just apply the same issue to every single election. I understand that. Some people on the right, though, do not understand that. So I want to start going state by state, discussing what went wrong. And I think a perfect state to talk first about is the great state of Pennsylvania. This was, in my opinion, the biggest upset of the night. I don't know a single person outside of, leftists on Twitter who, thought Biden would get 500 electoral votes in 2020, seriously thought that Fetterman would win, let alone by 5 points. This shocked me. This shook everybody to their core. And we got to discuss what actually happened here, because some people, look, blaming MAGA or all this other stuff is baloney. So let's get into it. Now, before I continue, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the Twitter accounts in the description down below. That's right, follow both of them. Still don't know what I'm going to do with them. And join the channel today. Guys, if you join the channel just for $3 a month, you can help support the daily content we all know and love. Plus, for $10 a month, you can get a shout out at the end of each video. So I hope you join today. All right, everybody, let's get into it, because I think this is one of the most talked about election in 2022 for postmortems, like what actually went wrong in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, let's address the, what most people think is the number one reason. The Pennsylvania gubernatorial race. Mastriano lost by 15. That means it's automatically Mastriano's fault for Oz's defeat. That is, quite frankly, the laziest explanation I have ever heard of. Look, you can make an argument Mastriano probably did hurt Oz by a point or two, but I recommend people look at history of gubernatorial elections across the board. Even in a state like Pennsylvania, there's always been I should say always, but there has been a trend of larger ticket splits between gubernatorial and Senate elections. Because guess what? These are two completely different animals. Governor's election, people are more focused on, it's kind of a more local, personable race. As for the Senate race, well, it's a federal race, of course. And again, I'm not saying that, all of these races are, because of X reason, but you can make the argument 1 or 2 points Mastriano did hurt Oz by. But when you still look at it, Oz lost by 5. So what explains the rest of this? Again, you could make the argument it was like a point or so, but historically, when you look at it, there's really not been that big of a correlation with candidates underperforming for a gubernatorial race to a Senate race. I mean, again, a correlation like 1 or 2 points when it's that big, but not 7 like some of these people are thinking. Again, I'm just saying 1 or 2 points, fine. Blaming it fully on Mastriano is absurd. Now, what I think was the number one reason Oz underperformed by multiple points is the primary. The primary was the biggest reason for Dr. Oz's underperformance. I mean, everybody remembers this. McCormick lost by just under 1,000 votes. This was a shit show of primary. I mean, we were weeks after. I mean, I think it was like, almost a month after the fact that, Oz barely scratched it off and then McCormick conceded. Yeah, it was a complete dumpster fire. A lot of chaos happened. A lot of entertainment also. It was a lot of memes that day, or that week, or that month, actually. But point is, this primary was one of the biggest concerns for Oz that he just could not recover by. Because Kathy Barnett, and not really McCormick, but a lot of McCormick's voters, They didn't trust Oz because of cultural issues such as like abortion. That's like a big thing a lot of these voters did not trust Oz with. That's a fact. It wasn't just, oh, abortion, hurt Oz because he wasn't pro-choice enough. We'll get to that in a minute. But you can make the argument that his past statements on certain issues, such as abortion, may have caused an effect. I mean, you look at where Oz had his biggest underperformance in: Armstrong County, Butler, Lawrence, Beaver, Greene, etc. These are not necessarily his strongest counties. They were some of his weakest counties in the primary, which was also some of McCormick's strongest counties. And you look at where Oz did best in compared to the rest of the state. It was Chester, it was Delaware, it was Montgomery, Bucks, Lancaster, etc. He did better in the more suburban, upscale parts of the state. Now, is this because of, abortion? Look, I find it hard to believe that the voters in rural Pennsylvania, they were more pro-choice and more reactive to abortion than the voters in the Philly area. I mean, that's kind of the argument some people are trying to make, that, the voters in Lancaster and Chester, they care less about abortion than the voters in Armstrong County. It's like, that's a reach beyond all reaches. Could have hurt Oz by maybe a point or so about abortion? Yeah, you could make that argument. But to say it's the full thing, not really. I do firmly believe 4 or 5 points of Oz's defeat, basically all of it, came from the competitive primary that Oz just could never recover from. And when he finally recovered, we saw this in the polling. When you scroll down here to the polling, you notice Oz around late October was when he finally started to recover most of the base. He finally started to get most of them on their side. Problem is, a chunk of these voters voted early. Remember this. A lot of voters, they voted before Election Day, before the debate happened. And it was clear, those that voted early before the debate basically all broke for Fetterman. Those that voted after the debate for early voting, a lot of them broke for Oz. So, yeah, you start doing some math and you realize the timing of the debate hurt, the timing of the primary hurt, the fact that Oz could never recover from it was brutal, and Fetterman ran basically an uncompetitive primary. And on top of all of this, if you thought that wasn't enough, the funding gap. Look at this. Oz was outspent just from his campaign finance alone by $23 million. When you account for the outside spending, it was probably closer to $50 to $60 million he was outspent. $50 to $60 million. Just for perspective, Pat Toomey, even with outside spending, outspent Katie, whatever. Point is, I can never say her last name correctly. Point is, Toomey outspent the Democrats by a couple $1 million, and he won by almost 2 points. Oz got crushed with funding. So yeah, you start adding all this up, and you realize it's in this order. Number 1, competitive primary. That hurt. That absolutely killed Oz in hindsight, plus the month-long legal situation. On top of that, you had a funding gap, which was absurdly large, plus you did have a gubernatorial candidate that did a lot worse than expected, and you had abortion. In that order, it's like 60-70% of Oz's, defeat, I would say, came from, or basically all of his defeat came from funding and the primary situation. If Oz did not have that serious of a primary, he probably would have won that race. I would say that's a fact. I think it's likely, though. You see a lot of Republicans that didn't really face that strong of primaries. They did great in 2022. We need more of that. So yeah, I think this was in a nutshell. Yeah, that's about right. It's not just Mastriano or abortion. Part of it, sure, but that doesn't explain Oz's defeat. That may have hurt Oz, the Mastriano an abortion by 2 points or so. That still doesn't explain some of the shifts, but any other case, it came down to competitive primary, lack of funding towards the end, huge funding gap towards the end, and I would say just turnout just not being there for Republicans really anywhere. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next video. Godspeed to all of you.